Greetings, fellow beings.
Hey guys, I'd like to personally welcome you to the 5th and final video of the Shadow series. Up to this point, we have heard a great many stories from people out there sharing their experiences on the web about the Shadow People phenomenon and delight. And for this episode, I am going to a more personal level by sticking to my word and sharing my stories. I swear on whatever you want me to swear on that these stories are true experiences been seared into my memories until the day I die. I'll talk a little more after the stories, and I know that right now you're thinking, oh, just get on with it. So,
Number 4.
all of these experiences happened within about a 2-year period around a time frame of 2004 to 2006. My first experience with this entity didn't scare me in any way, but more or less just left me really baffled. At the time of this incident, I was living at my parents' house, and I'm going to supply a little backstory so everything makes sense. At the top of the stairs is a hallway that either goes left to a bathroom and 2 bedrooms, or straight into a bedroom at the top, which faces down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, you can go right, which leads to 2 living rooms, a den, and the stairs to the basement, or you can go left down a hallway which leads to the kitchen, dining room, patio room, bathroom, and laundry room. First, on your left going down the hallway would be the laundry room, then the bathroom, then the patio room. The reason I mention this is because the deck in the back of the house runs along all 3 of these rooms, and in the laundry room there is a dog flap so the dogs can run in and out. The room also has a half door for locking the dogs in the room when it's muddy outside, of course shutting the dog flap as well. So it kind of doubles as a mudroom for the dogs, which at the time we had a little Shetland sheepdog or a Sheltie and a Doberman Pinscher. Okay, so my bedroom was the room at the top of the stairs. And in my bedroom I had my bed up against the far wall facing the door to the hallway. At the time, I was going to the community college in between going to work, so some days I would get up, go to work, go to school, and then head back to work. Well, the whole point is that I would be home at odd times, which no one else would be home, and I'd usually come in, let the dogs out while I would get ready to switch over from one thing to the next. Now, the way I remember this happening follows. I was sitting on the end of my bed, facing the stairs, and I was bent over tying my shoes. Out of my upper peripheral vision, I totally saw a dark figure zip across the bottom of the stairs from the right to the left. I don't know if I'd call it a shadow figure because it was out of my peripheral vision, but I swear it seemed solid. Like it didn't move across the far wall down at the bottom of the stairs, but it ran through the hallway, through the open space, like 3-dimensionally. And I swear it had a humanoid stance like a person. And it was hunched down, and it was trying to do a sneak run to avoid being spotted. I also noticed it had much like a fedora or derby hat on, or some kind of hat with a brim running all the way around it. Yeah, I know, typical Shadow Hat Man story, but that's exactly what I saw. So I stopped tying my shoes, as I am now looking down the stairs, totally confused. I was a little spooked because running through the list in my head, I could have swore I was the only one home and that the dogs were locked up in the laundry room from myself letting them out, of course. I then start thinking, someone's in the house. No, that can't be, because the dogs would be going nuts if that were the case. I closed the door to my room and locked it, because I was spooked. I paced in there for about 5 minutes, running through all the possibilities while trying to listen for anything unusual at the same time. But I only found myself listening to silence. Finally, all logic pointed to it wasn't a person. It had to be our Doberman, Roz. It had to be Roz. It had to be. Maybe I let them back in. I don't know. I made my way downstairs, and I started by heading to the right because that was the opposite direction I had watched this thing run to. After checking all the rooms, I headed into the basement thinking, man, there better not be a broken window down there. But there was nothing suspicious. so I went back upstairs. I came out of the basement, I rounded my way down to the laundry room. And, of course, I find myself looking into the two faces of the dogs staring up at me from their little pen. I checked out the rest of the house and decided, okay, it's time for me to go to Not the Fuck Here a little bit early today.
Number 3.
The second time I spotted the shadow figure near the bottom of the stairs was probably quite a while after the first time. The second time I had been home alone again, and I was texting my girlfriend while I was in the kitchen. I got up and I started out of the kitchen with my head down staring at my phone when my feet hit the hallway that heads past the laundry room and down to the stairway. Once again, out of my upper peripheral vision, I seen this figure just standing in the middle of the hallway next to the stairs. No hat this time, though. This time it appeared more stick-like, I want to say. It zipped behind the back of the stairs banister and stared at me for a moment, and then zipped into the right, into one of the living rooms where the den and the stairs to the basement was. I just froze. I backed up and I went back into the kitchen. After sitting in the kitchen for probably about 5 minutes, because apparently 5 minutes is how long it takes for me to decide it's safe, I finally full run down the hall, up the stairs and into my room, closing it behind me, fast as I could, locking it up. I am now safe, right? This time I was more freaked out than confused. I didn't think it was a person or a dog because by this point I just knew it was something unexplainable, and what is scarier than the unknown? Kind of a follow-up confirmation that there may be something to the shadow at the bottom of the stairs. A couple of years ago, I was over at my parents' house for a big family get-together, and we were doing the whole paranormal story time thing, because on my dad's side of the family, there are so many stories that it almost always comes up at some point. And it's usually me bringing it up because I love these things. And I decided I would tell my stories about the shadow at the bottom of the stairs. I was telling this story to maybe 5 or 6 people, with one of them being my mom. And after I finished, my mom shocked me with some interesting information. She said, "You know, a long time ago there was an old man who died in the front yard." I was stunned. I was kind of freaking a little. And I'm like, so the front yard being possibly where Dad built the addition to the house, which is where the bottom of the stairs are now? Yeah. Yes, that is exactly... I don't know what to say. That freaks me out. I still think about it constantly. And not too long after that, my dad said the same thing. "Oh, you know, some old man died in the front of the house?" Yeah, okay. Yeah, Mom told me finally. It's interesting how I never knew that living in this house for 15 years or longer, 20 years I think I lived in that house. And yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Follow-up confirmation number 2, on our last family vacation, my brother's girlfriend was with us, and we started talking about ghost stories. She actually asked me to tell some, probably because I'm always trying to ask everyone in the family about them to better solidify them in my own head, and to see if anyone's stories ever change, which they never do. I swear it's almost word for word every time someone tells their paranormal experience story. But anyway, I said something to the extent of, "Have I ever shared my experience about the shadow people in my parents' house with you?" She said I hadn't. And I began to say something to the effect that there seems to be a hot spot in the house. And before I had a chance to say anything else, she goes, ooh, is it at the bottom of the stairs?" I was freaking stunned. She mentioned something about it that I can't remember, probably too shocked at the time. Needless to say, that one moment sent a chill through me and keeps my head spinning today.
Number 2.
This story took place sometime in between the other 2 stories about the shadow at the bottom of the stairs. At the time of this story, my bed was no longer against the wall and facing the stairs, and the setup in my bedroom was quite unique. You'd come into the door and you had to walk around my TV stands to get to where my bed was. So I was laying in bed one night watching TV. I knew I had to get some sleep, but I wasn't really tired. I figured the best way to begin to try to get some sleep would be to shut off the TV and just roll over on my side and close my eyes. After laying there for a little bit, I started to hear a rustling from the window to the left side of my room. I figured I must have left the window open because it was May or April and wasn't really cold outside, but I didn't usually leave the blinds closed when I had the window open. I didn't feel like getting out of bed, so I just did my best to ignore it. But something about it really bothered me, and I realized that there was virtually no wind outside. It wasn't windy at all, yet it sounded like leaves rustling outside. I then started to think about a prowler or a murderer or whatever my mind could come up to freak me out. And after a while of dealing with my imagination, I was thinking, okay, TV's coming back on. So I'm finding myself laying in bed again, watching TV, when I start to notice a large shadow on the right side of my room on the wall. Humanish, humanoid, I don't know. I just watched it. It was a big black mass shadow on the wall. It slowly crept across the room walls from the right to the back wall, to the left, over to the window, and as it reached the window, it was kind of pausing as it made its way through the room, and when it got to the window, on the left side of the room, it paused yet again, and then I noticed black fingers start to stretch across my TV. They were wiggling like someone was moving them constantly, and as they wiggled, they moved from the left side of my TV screen to the right, and they became a whole hand. Now, what happened next? You can't really understand unless you've experienced something similar, but I can do my best to describe it. It was fear that was so strong that I began to faint. As I watched this black shadow hand move across my TV screen, the TV sound began to become distant. My vision started to swell closed and become nothing but a tunnel that was shrinking more and more by the second, as this shadow hand is still wiggling around in front of me. It became hard to breathe, and the fear was so intense that it's really indescribable. And as if I was firing off a gun, I screamed, "No!" in my head, and faster than I was sinking, everything just shot back to normal as this hand zipped back to the left of the TV and out of it, and the shadow on the wall disappeared. I don't know if you want to say it went out the window. I don't know, because that part of my vision was clouded at this point. As everything came back, the shadow and everything else disappeared, and it was like nothing happened at all. I don't remember how I managed to get to sleep, but eventually I did. Now, I've fainted a few times in my life. Yes, I have been grossed out to a point of passing out, and it's much like this experience with the sound going out and your vision going out. However, when you faint, you actually pass out for a little bit. It's usually for me, it's been like a minute. And it doesn't just go away instantaneous. You can't just in your head go, I'm about to faint. Don't do it. Wham! I'm fine. So I don't know what it was that happened to me that night, but it was truly terrifying. And I would suggest sleep paralysis, but I've never had it before or after this event. And that night, I hadn't fallen asleep yet. The next morning, I checked my window. It was closed. Confusing, but at the same time, I figured it was because I had the blinds closed. I had some friends come over that night, and we talked about it while I was sitting in the backyard by a fire. I was getting into this ghost stuff and had my camera on me and my laptop with me. Before I'd even heard about it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to type in shadow ghosts and see what I find. And of course, my friends agreed with me. Whatever site it was I happened across, it really started to creep me out because right there were accounts of the Hat Man and rustling sounds, and I'm freaking on my friends like, this is what I've experienced. As we're sitting there discussing this stuff, underneath my bedroom window, mind you, I start getting jabbed in the back. I freak out and get up and snap a picture behind me. Okay, what the hell is that? Anyway, that night I had them stay over. We did stay in my room. Nothing unusual happened, but I didn't want to be there by myself that night.
Number 1.
Not long after I moved into my home with my fiance, we got our first cat. Not too long after that, I started seeing a small cat-sized shadow jump from the back door blinds to the couch, and sometimes vice versa from the couch to the blinds. It was whenever I would come down the hallway into the kitchen, I would see it out of my right peripheral vision. It would just disappear whichever way it jumped. Disappeared into the blinds or disappeared into the couch. I thought it was the cat, but she was usually somewhere else, and when I would look around under the couch or in the blinds, she wasn't there, and I would go and find her somewhere else. The first time it happened, I just blew it off. Like, it's just my imagination. The second time, I was just like, oh, we have a shadow animal. The fiance claimed to have seen it once too. She thinks it was her rabbit, which passed away shortly before we moved. A little while after we got our second cat, we noticed that sometimes, and both cats would do this, one of them would sit in the dining room and just stare across the kitchen toward the room where we would sometimes spot the jumping shadow. On some occasions, the cats would also just stare up and watch nothing move around on the walls and across the ceiling. They'd attack the air and paw at nothing. Now, of course, we figured they were just both watching bugs or something, but we could never see any of these bugs. So we believe that there was something else they may have been tuned into that we weren't. Sometime around when we got our third cat, it all just stopped. No more staring into the other room, no more watching nothing move around on the walls and the ceiling, no more attacking nothing in the air. It just stopped. And our third cat, funny enough, loves to sit where those blinds are by the back door and look out them. She loves to watch out the door. I don't know. Perhaps she butted out the poor little shadow animal. So that's my story, guys. Thanks for listening. Now, you can believe me or be skeptical or not believe me, think rationally, logically, spiritually, optimistically, pessimistically, etc., etc. But if you've ever experienced something of this nature, or just supernatural in general, I guess you could say, I think that the reason most people look into supernatural events anyway is because you have a story of your own, right? If you just look at how many people claim to have, you're not alone. Now, I started up this channel for numerous reasons, and one was not only to help people get their stories heard, but to share my own as well. I have quite a few stories yet to tell, and they shall come in time when I get to the appropriate topics. So until then, comment, like, and or subscribe, and also
Be aware and keep your eyes open.